Hi guys. I wanted to share a little bit about a phrase that I think is very meaningful in this 1 year COVID anniversary time, and it's disenfranchised grief. Disenfranchised grief. It's grief that's not easily acknowledged either by society or socially. Some losses we talk about, oh, my pet died, or my spouse died, or my parent died. We have categories for those kinds of losses, but some kinds of losses we don't talk about as well. And so Ken Doka, who's a writer and a researcher, did a lot of work on grief and helped to coin the phrase disenfranchised grief. So when grief can't really be acknowledged, we sometimes talk about it as disenfranchised grief. By the way, if you want to know more about grief, there's a great website that I like a lot called What's Your Grief? I think it's .org. What's Your Grief? If you just put that in and Google it, you'll probably find it. But they talk a lot about different types of theories of grief and different types of grief. I think it's a great website. Anyway, disenfranchised grief is where it can't really be acknowledged. And this year during the pandemic, many people have suffered horrific losses. So there are the big losses of a family member due to COVID, losses of a job, employment. Many people have lost their, homes, even though you're not supposed to be able to foreclose. There's been terrible financial implications of this for many, many people. So those big losses we tend to think of as losses, but it's harder for us to recognize or even have capacity for these other kind of losses. So really all I'm saying today is, as you take stock of the year of a pandemic, and as you consider your own story, be careful not to overlook or skim over your own experiences of loss. So many people say, oh, well, I didn't lose anything. All my family members are alive for COVID, and that's right, and you could be grateful for that. But you can also acknowledge that we lost a whole year together. Grandparents lost access to grandchildren. Kids lost time with their friends and time in structured school. And we hear a lot about the academic losses for kids. Those are very real as well, but also the social interaction, the proms and the dances and the sports athletic seasons, that were completely lost. People had normal life goes on, people had cancer diagnoses in this year, and people died of other illnesses during this year. Those kind of losses that aren't kind of headline losses have a tendency to be missed, and we tend to gloss over them. So I'm mostly saying, of course, our experience with grief, we hope, moves us toward gratitude for the blessings that we do have, and also a sense of empathy for others and their losses, not moving us to either bitterness or isolation. We mostly want our experience of loss to draw us toward other people, not away from other people, because grief is isolating enough. So Tara Parker Pope writes for the New York Times. She wrote about this disenfranchised grief, and here are some of her suggestions, all of which we've talked about, but I'll review them for you. Validate your loss. So don't just say, well, I didn't lose anything big. I didn't have that kind of loss, so I didn't lose anything. That's not true. Validate your own sense of loss and others' loss. Seek support, and that is probably to talk about it, whether it's with a friend or a walking buddy or a family member. Seek support for the losses that you've had. It's been a year of devastating losses. Create a ritual. A ritual is just a way that we give license for ourselves to experience things. So, a funeral is a ritual. We couldn't have any funerals, It could be that you light a candle and say a prayer. It could be that you take a walk and promise yourself to be thinking about these things. But it's a time when you are intentional to consider and ponder something and maybe connect an action to it. So, lighting a candle, sitting in quiet, being outside under a favorite tree. These kind of rituals can help us to kind of express what's been going on for us and the losses that we felt. And help someone else. Of course, you know me, that's what I always say. If you're having a hard time, reach out to someone else. Find small moments of joy, and this is always very important. It doesn't take away the loss, but it reminds us that there is always something to be thankful for, even when we have all of these losses in our lives. And make sure not to miss those opportunities for small joys that present themselves every day. Remember that blessings only come to those who notice, right? So make sure to offer yourself the opportunity to see the blessings that are a parent every day when you're looking for them. But don't tend to deny your own experience of loss of this pandemic just because you didn't lose something big. We're going to try and be respectful of everyone's experience and how difficult this year was, and then move forward with hope that we will make the world a better place out of our despair and not allow ourselves to get too stuck in it. So that's it. Take care, and I'll talk to you again.